There'll be questions in that regard, because there's been criticism for the military's exercise, and then there's been different accounts, because the police said, from the statement the police released, they said that the military was testing their armored personnel carrier, which they recently repaired. The military says they were doing no such thing. And then there has been criticism in the respect that, the military is carrying out its exercise on a small road, not on any major road, but on a small off-the-way road that happens to be beside Nnamdi Kanu's house.
And what do you have against that?
What do we say to that?
It could have been Emmanuel Dibia's house. It could have been your house. It could have been anywhere. Passing by, they were on a road, headed somewhere, and they were stopped. And you think that's right? This is an entire section. They were heading somewhere on a road, but just because it's by the side of Kanu's house. And so what about it? What do you have against that? You like to answer that. What do you have against passing by his house, heading somewhere? Yeah, Mark, you have anything against that?
You do know that in recent times there have been tensions across the many, corners of the country. People have been talking about agitations, but perhaps the loudest that we have heard and the most disturbing that we have heard has come from the southeast region, in terms of, people saying that they want to leave the country, secessionist tendencies, as the case might be. And yes, it has given a lot of people cause for concern, as rightly people. But people believe that this is not perhaps the method, that maybe a sledgehammer is not what will be useful in this instance, and that these people are also well within their rights to express themselves within the ambit of the Nigerian Constitution. What is your take on that?
Certainly, they are within their rights to ask for self-determination. But, like I said, when you exercise your rights and it becomes lawless, when the law says an election is going to hold in a particular state next month, and you say, we're going to shut down Anambra State, there will be no election, that is lawlessness. That is, it's no longer, you're no longer pursuing your agitation within the ambit of the law. Coupled with other reference points. You don't have all the time for me to give you other, but let us just take the Anambra scenario. The law says there will be an election on a date, and you say there will be no election. You want until that day when they shut down Anambra State before the military will move in, or you want a situation where some group of persons who have told you we're going to succeed, we're going to cut off this section of the country. You want them to take up arms before the military will move in? And you will then say, the military moved in late. We're still battling with Boko Haram, and part of the reason, I blame for the military, for Boko Haram boldness today is that the military didn't go on time. So you still want that to repeat itself, and people will say, the military are not up and about their duties. So when people, like I said, what is key in the Southeast is the modus operandi. What are they doing? If we have a way of monitoring what they do, you will be able to say, the military are within their constitutional duties, or their acts of impunity on their side. But you don't have that details. But like I said, let us even work with the little we have from Nnamdi Kanu's narrative.
All right, Emmanuel, if I could just chip in this. I'm looking at a statement signed on behalf of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, by the Army Chief of Training and Operations. He says that the conduct of the exercise Python Dance 2 in the southeast states has become even more expedient due to the mindless assassinations, even in religious places, attack on security personnel, theft of weapons, armed banditry, kidnapping, cultism, and it goes on. So I just want to understand, are you saying that cultism, kidnapping, robbery all fall under the definition of the word insurrection?
Insurrection by extension connotes disorderliness, uprising, rebellion. It's wide. All of these fall under insurrection. Any form of rebellion, kidnapping is rebellion, armed robbery is rebellion, all of it, any form of rebellion, any form of disorderliness, civil unrest, any form of criminality, within this purview fall under insurrection. So in all of that, from the military perspective or from the public perspective, they are well within the legal framework to be in the southeast.
Does the situation in, looking at the Constitution now, Section 217, as you rightly mentioned, subsection C, which deals with suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities to restore order when called upon by the President, but subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. Does this suggest to you that the situation of the Python dance in the southeast, did the National Assembly assent to this, or is this an illegal move?
Like I said, it is not in all situations that you require the National Assembly.
The National Assembly must
it's not
appendage on this before you can move troops to an area like that.
Say it again.
It is all here in the Constitution. The same section, Section C, 217C, says it is subject to the National Assembly assenting to this before any deployment of any sort, be it Operation Python Dance or any other one, can take effect. But that was not done here. Would you answer the question of whether or not the National Assembly was involved in the deployment, or did it okay the deployment of troops to the southeast?
Good. There are executive powers. The president has executive powers in some situations, urgent situations, that he would mandate deployment of troops, even without referring to the National Assembly to get their consent. There are situations that will require the consent of the National Assembly. So the Constitution has spelled that out, but like I said, not in all, completely, absolutely all situations that you require the National Assembly to assent to it. In severe emergency situations that require, depending on intelligence that the military has, we do not know what intelligence they have, and within the time it will take to refer to National Assembly and get that consent, I mean, the deed may have been done. So we do not know what intelligence they have. We are not saying that the assent of the National Assembly is not required to deploy troops. That's not the point. But the president has some powers as it is. He hasn't declared a state of emergency. This is not a state of emergency. This is just sending troops to go conduct surveillance in a particular area.
This is not referring to the powers of the president to declare a state of emergency. This is still within the sub 217C, suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities to restore order when called upon to do so by the president, but subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly.
Very well.
What act of the National Assembly has been prescribed in this instance?
To the extent where we are today.
Well, sorry to interrupt you. We'll let you answer that question when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Well, Mr. Emmanuel Dibia, a legal practitioner, is still with us in the studio into our closing moments with him. Now, just before we went on break, you were answering the question, what act of the National Assembly has been prescribed in this instance?
Yeah, and I was telling you that every situation activates a reaction that will help that same situation. If, for instance, we have a sudden external aggression that requires immediate response, you want to look at the time it will take to talk to the National Assembly and get assent. Some of these are automatically activated. What we have in the Southeast, you don't know the level of intelligence. You don't know if anything was going to happen within 48 hours or 72 hours. You don't know. And within which period the deed would have been done. So they moved over to the Southeast and we're just there on surveillance, patrol, doing their own thing.
Well, I have to say thank you most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily. Mr. Emmanuel Dibia is a legal practitioner. That will be it from Abuja. It's back to you guys in Lagos.